2 years after he took the job as co-CEO of DC Studios, James Gunn's DCU is here with Creature Commandos. But is it any good? Hey Internet, I'm Chris, and this is the place on the internet where I talk about comics, movies, games, and things I'm generally passionate about. So on Max, HBO Max, or whatever Warner Brothers Discovery is calling it these days, the first two episodes of Creature Commandos dropped. And if you know James Gunn's about, if he's going to do a story, he's going to do a comic book story, he's going to do it about a group of misfits that don't really work together in a team and they must work together to save the world. And that is Creature Commandos. That was the Suicide Squad, and that was Guardians of the Galaxy. And I think with Creature Commandos, the first two episodes, the first episode's a little like okay, and as we get into the second one, I think where we get more character work with the bride, it's much stronger. The humor in it is very James Gunn, but I have to say it was more sort of establishing the tone, whereas not something that's laugh out loud funny in any way. And I think with comedies in general, when it comes to TV series, they're a little bit harder to establish. And I think as time goes on and you understand the characters, that's when things begin to get funnier. But I have to say, I was a little shocked watching these first two episodes and seeing the amount of lore for the DCU that was dropped, including a trailer for the weeks to come in Creature Commandos, where they show technically what is the first appearance of the DCU Superman and Starfire, which is insane. But it was pretty cool. And in the first episode, you have Amanda Waller, which we all know is played by the amazing Viola Davis. And we know if you've watched Peacemaker, which is considered kind of like light canon now, you know that her daughter outed her. So now they can't use humans anymore. So now Rick Flag Sr. must team up with a group of monsters to save Poliscan. What I think that's what it's called. And save the princess, who is working with the U.S. government to broker a deal over their natural resources. And in that land, you have Cersei, who is historically a Wonder Woman villain, and she, along with the sons of Themyscira, are terrorizing that land. So the Creature Commandos, or Task Force M, must defend that world. And again, I really like the animation. You know, Warner Brothers animation for the last few years when it comes to DC projects has been super disappointing considering their history with the DC animated universe. This new Tomorrowverse that they were doing landed like a thud. It just ended with the Crisis on Infinite Earths 3-part saga that was also pretty bad considering. But I do like the animation, and there's some really cool stuff in terms of action. You have a Rick Flag Sr. and Dr. Phosphorus fight that was pretty awesome. And then in episode 2, the bride and Cersei go at it. And I have to say, the bride is probably the best character in the series so far. And granted, you know, the second episode is basically all about her and her origin story. But I have to say that character, and I knew like right before watching the series, if you have DC Infinite, they have a really great collection of Creature Commandos comics. And if you've read Jeff Lemire's run, also Jeff Lemire's Frankenstein in the Shade run, and then also Grant Morrison's Frankenstein, Seven Soldiers, they have some great moments with both Frankenstein and the bride. And then David Harbour makes an appearance in the second episode and towards the end of the first. And Frankenstein is a weird character, I have to say. He's very close to the Mary Shelley version of him, but he's very emotional, obviously very attached to the bride. And yeah, I think the first two episodes, outside of the big connections to the larger DCU, kind of play out like how'd you expect. Just because it essentially is a sequel to the Suicide Squad. Like basically, I could have seen this as a live action version of the Suicide Squad too. It's like, okay, like the first mission didn't happen. Also, in terms of establishing what actually happened, Amanda Waller actually references Project Starfish which was the mission in the Suicide Squad. So we know a lot of the events there actually happen as well, because we have Weasel appear here, and we know Weasel survived the events of Project Starfish. How those events played out, we'll see in future episodes, and also how they establish certain things, because just from James Gunn's comments, I think he's been a little bit less sure about the Suicide Squad's events, and I'd imagine maybe that's because of casting. Like, you have big characters like Harley Quinn that might need to be recast for the DCU because you have a new Batman and all those kind of things. But I would say probably it's pretty close. And Rick Flag Jr. died in the Suicide Squad, and that is also referenced, and we know Rick Flag Sr. also is dealing with that in this. Although he is working with Amanda Waller, who had a direct line to why Rick Flag Jr. is dead. We know he's working with Argus. He's been working in the military since he was 18, and that's when he had Rick Flag Jr. So you do get some like really cool character moments for Frank Grillo's Rick Flag Sr. But I have to say, just based on the first two episodes, and I think there's 8 or 7 in this, I would say this is probably one of the weaker James Gunn superhero outings, in particular in his DC work. I love the Suicide Squad. I love Peacemaker. And I think because this show is 20 minutes and it's animated, and you're introducing new characters, there's also a new DC lore you're introducing, is just it's moving pretty quickly, but it's hard to kind of like introduce a whole gang of characters and have people care about them enough where the jokes are landing and stuff like that. I would say The Bride and Alan Tudyk's Dr. Phosphorus are probably the standouts. Tudyk does a really good job of, I would say, his jokes are landing right now. And then, obviously you have G.I. Robot, Nina Mazursky. I think she's going to have a really cool background, and hopefully we get to learn more about her story. But as of right now, I have to say this is probably decent to good. It's not like the fantastic start to the DCU that, you might think, but that might change with episodes to come. So I'm holding out to be like, oh, this is mid or anything like that until I see further episodes, because obviously people are reacting who have seen later episodes pretty hard to what's been going on in the series. And I'm confident in James Gunn's writing that he will get there. It's a different format, and I think it does not play well with comedy, because like I said, usually like even my favorite comedies of all time, like The Office or Parks and Recreation, stuff like that, it does take a little bit like to get established, like to find the characters and for you to really understand like where that humor comes from and why they act a certain way. So but I have to say, even though it isn't like a home run, I am still super excited about what's to come from the DCU. Like I said, they had that trailer about what's to come in terms of, Cersei gives a glimpse of the future where you get a dead Superman, Mr. Terrific, and Starfire. So we know the Teen Titans, and there had been rumored that there was a Teen Titans script being written for the DCU. And then you also have a dead Peacemaker, which is insane. Peacemaker is like the anchor being of this DCU. He's probably had you have Peacemaker season 2. He killed Rick Flag Jr. Rick Flag Sr. has an appearance in this, in Superman and Peacemaker season 2. So Peacemaker is a pretty important part of the DCU at large. And then obviously there's things like Cersei, like, I wonder, like, and James Gunn has said that he's cast DCU actors that we don't know about. And we know in Creature Commandos, there are going to be characters that are voiced by actors that won't play them in live action. So there might be things like we might get a Batman. We might get a glimpse at Wonder Woman. So it'll be really interesting to see. And Wonder Woman's a big part of the Trinity. So I know Warner Brothers Discovery, the company at large, probably wants Wonder Woman to be established at some point. So I wonder what that's going to look like. Especially, we know there's going to be a Paradise Lost Themyscira show that's in the works that's close to sort of like Game of Thrones and all that. But yeah, overall, I liked it. I like James Gunn's stuff, but I have to say, like, the first episode was probably like a 6.5. And then I would say the second was an 8. Like I said, the Bride is really a standout in the show so far. And I think that's probably the format they're going to go with the rest of the way, where each episode highlights a particular character, gives them a flashback so that you understand who they are. And just based on sort of the story, there's not much there. So I'd imagine a lot of it is played out in flashbacks to really flesh out who the characters are. But yeah, what did you think? Are you really excited? Oh, by the way, another funny thing in see, and this is probably the biggest cameo or Easter egg. Shaggy makes an appearance in a flashback of showing, the Bride and Frankenstein and their back and forth throughout the centuries. You get a little glimpse of Shaggy, and obviously he's a Warner Brothers character, but it's also double Easter egg because James Gunn wrote the live action Scooby-Doo movie. So that was a pretty fun, point at the screen moment. So don't miss that. And that was pretty funny, I thought. But yeah, what did you think? Did you like Creature Commandos? If you did, leave a like, comment, subscribe, and peace.